Today we continue our discussions on releasing identification to beliefs that result in looking for unnecessary approval and validation in the world of appearances, rather than realizing it is found within in relation to the world of appearances. By realizing that it's found within, regardless of appearances, you can approve of and validate yourself to remain in your ideal state of consciousness, from which all that is ideal in all areas of your life are automatically added unto you. That way, you can freely play with the appearances rather than being controlled by beliefs in relation to them. Now, James Allen wrote a wonderful book called All These Things Added. He said, "The children of light who abide in the kingdom of heaven see the universe and all that it contains as the manifestation of one law, the law of love. They see love as the molding, sustaining, protecting, and perfecting power eminent in all things animate and inanimate. To them, love is not merely and only a rule of life. It is the law of life. It is life itself." So there's no real issue in experiencing acknowledgement for your accomplishments from others or the world of appearances. Yet if dependency is built on the thought that it needs to be found externally, it could lead to becoming a slave to the world of appearances rather than operating from the divine center where all true approval and validation is found. As James Allen also said in the Heavenly Life portion of the book, All These Things Added, he said, "The secret of life, of abundant life, with its strength, its felicity, and its unbroken peace, is to find the divine center within oneself and to live in and from that, instead of in that outer circumference of disturbances, the clamors, cravings, and argumentations which make up the animal and intellectual man." So now what can create the mental and thus physical disturbances of cravings and argumentations? It is certain beliefs. And one I'd like to bring awareness on today is perfectionism. Perfectionism is the belief where one seems to forget that they are already perfect. As a result, they crave approval and validation and even argue with themselves mentally, which can result in looking unnecessarily to the world of appearances for signs of approval and validation. This needing for signs could play out in different ways through relationships, hobbies, career, artistic expression, invention, skill cultivation, in a way where one never feels their expressions in these areas and or the expressions of others around them in these areas are good enough, rather than seeing these areas as expressions of love, as James Allen mentioned here in the beginning. See, we can always acknowledge love more through these areas, both as the way they appear now and also as they further appear by allowing them to be valued to higher degrees through the moment-by-moment expression of them. This releases identification to perfectionism and allows us to value the ongoing nuances of expression that appear moment to moment in these and all areas of our lives. For example, imagine for a moment a writer who writes a blog post based on a topic of interest. After they put it out for the world to enjoy, they appreciate what they have expressed. They feel accomplished for completing the task. They see clearly with this attempt, like with all their attempts in the past, that they are writing more congruently and authentically with how they truly choose to express themselves. Perhaps if they're students of copywriting, they have integrated some of the best practices to a higher degree than before. All these things and more added unto them as an expression of love channeled through writing. Then upon reflection, after putting it out to the world so others can enjoy and benefit from the post, they choose to further elaborate on an aspect, or perhaps they now desire to say it differently. Or perhaps they have new inspiration or life experiences that they would like to incorporate into them, another blog post. And the process continues again and again based on further loving refinement, like a chef who by taste feels inspired to add more or less of a spice or another spice. Perhaps they may explore new topics as they continue to experience flow through their creative expressions. What we see here, thus, is no signs of perfectionism, rather an appreciation for nuance, which through the process they may also find that they are building an authentic, loving relationship with their audience who appreciates and benefits from the love they express through their writings. We see then that the audience appears to provide acknowledgement, approval, and validation on certain insights, yet the author was not dependent on these signs because they know all these things are added in perfect harmony and mutual benefit with all from the foundation of love within. This is a form of unconditional bliss, like we discussed last week. I'll link in the description to that video. And so, thus, their bliss is not dependent on the outcome of the blog post, but rather the process of showing up each day, or whatever frequency they have chosen to creatively express in their blog, from the foundation of love and through the lens of their interests, releasing one after another, valuing further nuances of optimization and expression, not swayed by beliefs of the past that may appear on the surface, but rather remaining authentic and true to their inner voice, beyond the mental chatter that makes up, as James Allen said, the disturbances, which can be the unnecessary argumentations in mind of perfectionism. Life thus is experienced as an ongoing expression of the inward inherent perfection. And from this premise, the areas mentioned are experienced as an ongoing realization of the inherent perfection, unfolding and realizing, inwardly acknowledging as love along the journey of life experiences, rather than looking for external verification of the perfection in the outer aspects of life. I like how James Allen said it in his book. As we unfold ourselves, we enfold the universe. The enfolding the universe can be looked at as the realization of the inherent divine perfection through areas of life such as relationships, hobbies, skill cultivation, etc. So we see the distinction here between perfectionism versus appreciating nuances. The word nuance means a subtle distinction in sound, feeling, appearance, or meaning. There's a lot of power in nuance. There's also a lot of power in an ongoing, consistent appreciation and expression of the nuances of your already inherent perfection through relationships, hobbies, career, artistic expression, invention, skill cultivation, etc. Perfectionism is often defined as the need, or we could say neediness and desperation to appear to be perfect, which is an illusion. How can you need yourself or anything you do to appear perfect when you are already perfect, as life is an unfolding of your inherent perfection, as the various life experiences and life appearances? Appreciating nuances is a totally different energy than perfectionism. Valuing the nuances of perfection that appear each moment is the enfolding, as James Allen said, of the inherent perfection in and as the world of appearances, and perfectionism is looking to the world of appearances for proof, validation, or confirmation of the perfection, rather than acknowledging the inward perfection is always reflected in the creative expressions or other areas mentioned. Those that operate from a belief of perfectionism may even put out wonderful creations, although they may not see how wonderful their creations are. Yet others see it who acknowledge the inward perfection within themselves, which is another important aspect to keep into consideration. If one allows themselves to be trapped by a belief of perfectionism, they will see flaws where others see perfection, and whatever they think feelingly upon, they will see more of, creating their own reality bubbles in the process. So the choice is theirs. Now, those that value the perpetual creative expression of their inherent perfection, like the blogger example, will always experience joy because their joy is unconditional, from which they choose personally how they would like to express this unconditional joy in various shapes and forms through various styles of creative expressions. Perfectionism is thus an unnecessary controlling belief. Some may consider it as part of the profile of high achievers. Yet, I've seen both. High achievers who are perfectionists and high achievers who acknowledge their inherent perfection already, like we've discussed thus far in the blogger example, and express it as an ongoing, joyous journey of creative expression with further nuanced distinction. The high achiever perfectionists we've seen experience a journey of unnecessary force, control, stress, and frustration, and the other who acknowledges their inherent perfection and expresses it creatively in whatever shape or form, as every area of life is a creative expression, lives a flow-based life. For this, I also recommend my Flow-Based Life series, which I'll link to in the description. Now let's talk about ways one can release the identification with the perfectionism belief through creative endeavors. And these can also be practiced in the other areas mentioned earlier. Use your imagination. The possibilities are endless. So I really like James Allen's work, so I'd like to reflect on some of his quotes from his book, All These Things Added, and I'd like to weave them into these three areas for our discussion. So number one, we have self-talk before, during, and after the creative process. James Allen says, "We have all power now, but not knowing this, one could say, they will be perfect next year, or in so many years, or in so many lives. The dwellers in the kingdom of God who live only in the now say, I am perfect now." So now it is important to be aware of our self-talk and ensure that it is from the premise of already being perfect now, which could involve regular practice if one has made it a habit of not speaking this way about themselves and in relation to whatever they are doing, which I can assure you will change and become a habit as this is kept into consideration. By doing this, we also allow the skill cultivation in relation to our creative expression, if applicable, to naturally unfold without the resistance caused by the perfectionism belief. But also helps prior to your creative expression, or any area of your life, even prior to going on a date, for example, as I've received a lot of messages with questions on this. It is to be aware of what your inner dialogue is prior to the date, and if it's not ideal, carry on a conversation with yourself from the foundation of already being perfect, ideal, and loving, beyond any judgment to the world of appearances. So you can bring yourself into the feeling that you are already that, which from there, you will automatically start to notice the details of inherent perfection. This is the distinction between needing to look for it and having all these things automatically added onto you. Now, during the creative process, I recommend also being aware of how you think in relation to whatever it is you're doing. Also keeping in consideration what James Allen mentioned here in this quote, "All that tempts me away from my ideal, I will not listen to. I will listen only to the voice of my ideal." So one way of looking at this is to acknowledge that beyond the mental chatter is your true inner voice of intuition that speaks to you from who you are ideally, from the divine center of love. And any other mental chatter in mind which is related to the past belief of perfectionism is looking to be released anyways. We release identification to that belief by not feeding those perfectionism thoughts. Instead, we rise above them, you are above them, and listen only to the voice that speaks lovingly. Like, for example, some of the insights that I mentioned earlier, which you could take notes to remind yourself of if you like. Another way is to simply focus on what you are doing from a state of bliss. This also releases the thoughts of perfectionism, and thus I recommend performing your activities from a state of flow, which releases the neurotransmitter anandamide, which promotes the feeling of bliss. And there are plenty of details of learning how to do this in my Flow-Based Life series, which I'll link to again in the description. Now, number two, we have valuing the nuances of the creative process. James Allen says, "Be superior to your possessions, body, circumstances, and surroundings, and the opinions of others, and your attitude towards. They who regard themselves as the outcome and the tool of circumstances could fluctuate with the changes in their outward condition. To detach oneself from every outward thing, or you could say releasing over-identification to the world of appearances, and to rest securely upon the inward virtue, this is the unfailing wisdom. So approach whatever activity you perform as an opportunity to express your inherent perfection. Acknowledge that the perfection is expressed with each attempt. Like, for example, I snowboard. Each run provides the opportunity to enjoy the experience and practice a few things without judgment, rather enjoying the process from which I may find opportunities to optimize in whatever shape or form. These are nuances that I choose to apply to enhance the experience, which also result in a higher degree of skill cultivation and expression, all from that foundation of inherent perfection. And you could do the same as well in whatever area of your life you choose. By operating this way, there's no comparison to others, thinking their way is better than mine or mine is better than theirs, which could only deepen the conviction of the perfectionism-based belief. Instead, only deep presence and joyful engagement with the present moment and the activity. This is done again and again with each run until it's time to go home. What I'm saying here is enjoy the experiences, whatever they may be, and also go meta to that and enjoy the fact that you are enjoying the experience. This is something worth acknowledging, that you enjoy both the actual experience and going meta, enjoying the nuances for optimizations that you gather, which nicely relates to point number 3, acknowledging the optimizations from a loving eye. So, as mentioned, we have plenty of opportunity to optimize, and the key here is to let go of perfectionism and embrace the realization of your inherent perfection through the nuances. This is how we see optimizations from a loving eye. And this is the distinction between someone looking at an optimization point or optimization data and saying they're not good enough, versus someone looking at an optimization point or optimization data and acknowledging that they are enjoying the process and excited to incorporate some of them into the upcoming creative expressions, like the earlier example provided with the blogger. As James Allen says, to refuse to be enslaved by any outward thing or happening, regarding all such things and happenings as for your use, for your education, this is wisdom. So we discuss often, and we shall further discuss it, as I've plenty more to discuss on the topic, of not being a slave to the world of appearances, which is simply a result of releasing identification to specific beliefs in mind that causes a person to appear as a slave to the world of appearances, as he says here. They are moved by none, yet learn from all. They crave love from none, yet give love to all. Herein lies the strength which shall never fail. So we see how much perfectionism can be a trap which can cause a person to be a slave to the world of appearances, rather than accepting that they are already ideal now, inherently perfect now, from which their relationships, hobbies, career, artistic expression, invention, skill cultivation is allowed to express automatically. All these things added onto them automatically, which includes a higher degree of nuanced appreciation and expression from their already inherent divine perfection. So I trust you found this video to be helpful. Let's go ahead and conclude this with an auto-suggestion to further encourage. You could say, I am ideal now. I am inherently perfect now, from which all these related things are added onto me as far as my senses perceive. As a result, I listen only to the voice of my ideal, speaking from the foundation of love in relation to all appearances and experiences, automatically appearing to be in sync as reflections, including the nuances of the inherent perfection I already am in each moment of life experience and life appearance. If you would like a copy of this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk with you soon. Take care.